Shifting our focus to Africa now, Nigeria has officially become a net exporter of petrol for the first time. The milestone has been achieved after output surged to record levels at the Dangote Petroleum Refinery in the state of Lagos. The facility is rapidly transforming the downstream oil market across the African continent, and according to reports, crude supply to the facility has risen to around 565,000 barrels per day in March 2026. This represents the highest utilization levels since the refinery began its operations in late 2023. Nigeria becoming a net exporter of petrol comes amidst tensions in West Asia and the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. The blockade has definitely triggered one of the largest disruptions in the history of the global oil market.
Welcome back, guys. Today we want to dig deeper into the Aliko Dangote Refinery, the one that has got everyone buzzing on this African continent and the world at large. But if you look closely, there's a lot of information that is hidden from you in all these headlines that are meeting your eye. Today we want to discover what is that is beneath those headlines that is not being brought onto you. So let's back up, spare a few minutes of your time. First of all, you can subscribe to the channel, like, share and comment. In late February 2026, the world changed. The Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway handling 20 to 30% of global oil, was largely disrupted by the outbreak of the Iran war. Within weeks, global oil prices surged to between $110 and $120 per barrel. And suddenly, the world started looking at Nigeria, at a single facility in Lagos, at the Dangote Refinery. Today, we are going to dig into the realities most coverage misses, what are the opportunities, and what is yet to be overcome. First of all, let's look at the geopolitical moment. Why Dangote suddenly matters? Let me give you the scale of what we are witnessing. The Dangote Refinery is the largest single train facility with a capacity of 650,000 barrels per day. It reached full production capacity in February 2026, literally weeks before the Iran war broke out. The timing is almost unbelievable. Without this facility coming online exactly when it did, Africa would be facing an energy catastrophe right now. The evidence is already in the numbers. Since the war began, Dangote has exported 12 cargoes of refined products, totaling 456,000 tons to 5 African countries: Cote d'Ivoire, Cameroon, Tanzania, Ghana, and Togo. According to Reuters, exports of clean petroleum products from the refinery surged from 100,000 barrels per day in February to 214,000 barrels per day in March. Here is what that means in human terms. Countries like Ghana, which only meets about a third of its fuel needs through its own refineries, are now securing supply from Lagos instead of the Persian Gulf. South Africa is reportedly seeking 12-month supply contracts. Kenya has shown interest. For the first time in history, an African facility is deciding which countries keep their lights on. Not Saudi Arabia, not Russia, and not the United States as well. Aliko Dangote himself put it bluntly. When asked about the crisis, he said, "It's not about the pricing, it's about availability." That is the geopolitics of energy in 2026. And I'm proud to say that Africa finally has a seat at the table. Okay, let's look at the crude paradox. What it means to actually feed the beast. Now here is where the story gets complicated. Infuriatingly complicated. Because building the world's largest refinery means nothing if you cannot feed it crude oil. And I'm afraid to tell you that Nigeria, one of Africa's largest oil producers, is actually failing to do that exactly. Now, let me give you the numbers from David Bird, the CEO of the Dangote Refinery, speaking on Arise Television in March 2026. Under the government's crude supply arrangement, the refinery should be receiving between 13 and 15 cargoes of crude per month. That is what they need to meet Nigeria's domestic fuel requirements. Currently, they are receiving only 5 cargoes. That is about 30% of what was agreed.
So the first question about the government support, yes, we have been very vocal that there is an existing arrangement in place under the Crude for Naira program, commonly misunderstood as a pricing regime. It is not. That is priced at full international benchmark crude oil pricing, however, without the foreign exchange implication. That has been very successful in stabilizing the FX, and I think Nigeria and our relationship with NNPC and Dangote, we should all be very proud of that. That agreement, however, is not only just from a volume, but also a quality allocation perspective not being met. And our demand of the government is just to be transparent with that allocation methodology and be transparent, because what we see under that agreement, we should be getting about 13 to 15 cargoes a month. And that's what we could process to meet the domestic fuel requirements of Nigeria. Currently, we're only getting 5. So that's an underperformance against that pre-agreed volume contract.
One industry expert told Vanguard that 7 cargoes, the planned increase of May, appears to be insufficient for a facility of this size. 30%. Let that sink in. But wait, it gets worse, much worse. According to Bird, the same Nigerian crude grades that are denied to the refinery are then sold on the international market, and Dangote is forced to repurchase them in US dollars at premiums of up to $18 per barrel. Let me repeat that. Nigerian oil is being exported, Dangote buys it back at a markup, and then the profit goes to international traders. So, as Bird stated, that value between the purchase price and the premium that we are now seeing is the money that Nigeria is leaking to the international trading community. This is not a refinery problem. This is a policy problem. In fact, energy expert Abdul Razak Hamzat told The Guardian in January 2026 that inconsistent crude supply, weak policy execution, and regulatory uncertainty have prevented the refinery from operating at full strength. He noted the facility has operated at only about 60 to 65% capacity. Now, let us look at the price paradox. Why imported fuel is being cheaper? Now, let me share something that will surprise you. Something that seems to defy logic. The World Bank, in its latest Nigeria Development Update, released in April 2026, made a striking disclosure. Imported petrol is currently about 12% cheaper than the petrol supplied by the Dangote Refinery. As of March 23, 2026, Dangote's ex-depot price stood at approximately 1,275 naira per liter, compared to an estimated import parity price of around 1,122 naira per litre.